morning everyone, it's Annie with Manor Farms Homestead. We're going to be planting sweet potato slips today, so I wanted to show you a little bit on how I grew my sweet potato slips indoors starting in January. So like January, I do have a video where I started these potato slips and I'll link to that in the video description. But I have a lot of little slips over here. Now what I did, I put my potatoes into these little trays with a little bit of soil over them, and they just started shooting up the little slips out of the potatoes from the eyes. Last year this took me quite a while to get enough slips going because I used store-bought potatoes that were not organic, and they had obviously been sprayed with a sprout retardant. That led to very poor and kind of spotty sprouts coming up. So this year I used my potatoes that I grew last year, and I've just had an abundance of slips. Now as the slips get up about this size right here, I'll pull them off and then stick them in a cup of water, and that's what these 3 cups that I have going here are. And they continue to grow roots as long as you keep them keep the little bottom in water. Don't let it dry out, and they'll just continue to kind of put on roots. Let's go over here and look at the healthy root systems we've got on all these little stars. So the cup's just completely full of roots, so we're gonna have time pulling those apart. But I'm not sure how many I have here. I've definitely got plenty, and probably more than enough to fill up the beds that I have. These slips are out of the Beauregard potatoes that I grew last year, and there's a few O. Henrys and a few of the purple sweet potatoes. The O. Henrys are a white sweet potato. They're more of a potato texture. Really, really good. I didn't have very many of them last year, but I would like to have more this year because they were so tasty. All right, since our last video, we put in these 2 new beds. It's amazing how quickly you run out of room in your garden. I've said it before, and I imagine it'll continue to be true. We're actually planning to go all the way down this line of beds with an additional row of beds. It probably won't happen this summer. We'll probably stop with these 2 beds for the summer, and then in the fall put in a few more beds down through here for winter items and prepping for next spring. So these 2 beds will be filled with sweet potatoes. Last year I planted these 2 long beds on the end in sweet potatoes, and out of these 2 beds here we had more sweet potatoes than we could eat in a year. I gave my parents probably about 25 pounds of sweet potatoes, plus I canned some, and we still have some left. I also had enough sweet potatoes to do plenty of sweet potato slips from. So we are going to downsize just a little bit this year and just use these 2 beds up here for sweet potatoes. Now I've probably got more slips than what I need for these 2 beds, so I may plant a couple more beds in about a month once I harvest my potatoes, because I've got quite a few potato beds here that will be filled up with summer stuff as soon as we harvest those out. And then I've got some onions here that are about ready to harvest as well. So we'll get started with getting these sweet potato slips in the ground. So in these beds that we have set up here, they're kind of the same as all of my beds. The base of it is composted cow manure that we scrape up out of the fields every winter after feeding our cows hay over the winter time. We have a big pile of it that we just let compost down. So the base of these beds is that composted cow manure. So some of it's not completely broken down. We still have a little bit of hay and vegetative matter that you can still see in there. Since it's not 100% broken down, I did put in some garden soil and actually a little bit of potting mix on the top of these, and these beds have sat out here for about a week, so I've just been spraying them down with a little bit of water to continue that breakdown process of the manure. But we're going to go ahead and get these planted into now. I've got a little bit of triple 13 fertilizer here, and I'm just going to throw over a light sprinkling of this. If you prefer to go all organic, you can do that as well. There's a lot of organic fertilizer already in this from the manure, but this will be enough to feed our sweet potatoes throughout the season. I'll also come back in a couple of weeks once my plants have rooted well and established, and top dressed with a little bit of rabbit manure. And I'm just going to lightly work this in so that it's not completely sitting up on the surface of the dirt. Definitely don't overdo your commercial fertilizer. If you do use that, because it can burn your plants when they're really young and not fully established. Alright, so I'm not sure which of the sweet potato slips are which. Like I said earlier in the video, I know we have some O. Henrys, we have some Beauregards, and we have a few of the purple sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are actually not a potato. They're in the morning glory family, and they're vines, so they will run all over this area. And when you're transplanting, it's nice if you have kind of an overcast day like today where they're not going to get baked by the sun, especially if you've had them indoors. You're not truly acclimated to the outdoor weather, and it can be a little rough on them. So a cloudy day or late evening is a good time to transplant. Give them just a little bit of time to acclimate. Now I'm planting these pretty close together, the same as I did last year. They will definitely be crowded and they'll definitely run everywhere. But I'm just trying to get as much into a small space as possible, and they did just fine like this last year. I don't know if that's really going to amount to much. We'll just kind of extra plant it. Maybe it'll grow maybe. And sweet potatoes are typically harvested in the fall. They need a long growing season. But we have a pretty hot, humid growing season here, and they really thrive. So last year, I planted them in late May, early June, and they were ready to harvest by the end of August. So we'll see. Nice root development on these little slips. Last year, my sweet potatoes ran so much and were so huge you couldn't even see the beds anymore, which is how we're getting with some of our potato beds now, but these definitely really took off last year. I'll link to the video where we harvested last year's sweet potatoes if you're interested in watching that as well. And any kind of potato, whether it be sweet potato or regular potatoes, they like loose, loamy soil where they can really have room to develop the tubers. So raised beds are really ideal for any kind of potatoes. Well, we're going through these slips faster than I thought I would. I have more inside we may have to go get. I believe a lot of these little pointed leaf slips are for the purple sweet potatoes. Between these sweet potatoes and the loofah gourds, we'll probably have a lot of running over this arbor. After you harvest your sweet potatoes in the late summer or fall, the leaves are a pretty massive collection of nutrients that we always feed to our cows. So if you have any livestock, pigs, sheep, cows, even chickens like them, it's definitely some good nutrition for your animals as well. So none of it goes to waste between the sweet potatoes and the vines. It's all usable. Well, between what I had in the cups and what I still have growing off my potatoes in the house, I think we're going to be just right for these 2 beds, which is great. Most of the time I have way more than what I need. Just right is good. Alright, so I'm going to go get the last of my slips inside and we'll finish planting these beds. Alright, so these are the sweet potato slips that I still had inside. All of these were still attached to the potatoes in the trays with a little bit of soil over them. They had not been in the cups of water where they could establish a nice root system. So if you look at these, they're really just bare at the bottom where I pulled them off of the potatoes. Now I'd like these to establish a nice little root system before I actually transplant them, because they won't have as much transplant shock if they've got a nice little root system. They will still root even if I put them in the ground like this. It just takes longer, and I would have to be very vigilant to keep my soil nice and moist. So instead, I'm just gonna leave these in this cup of water for a week or two, let them develop some nice roots, and then I'll finish planting this bed of sweet potatoes. It's not gonna hurt anything to be a couple of weeks behind on some of the plants. Like I said, they tend to be ready to harvest well before frost date or anything like that, so I'm not worried about getting behind on planting these. So we'll just go with that and finish our sweet potato bed in about 2 weeks.